If there is one thing I appreciate when it comes to visual media, it's good character design. As a big animation fan, it is incredibly important to ensure each character has had as much thought put into their aesthetic as possible. And in the age of CGI, I feel that the importance of character design is often overlooked. Many recent controversies when it comes to terrible visuals have been wrongfully blamed on quote-unquote bad CGI, when in reality the CGI is well crafted. The problem is just how ugly the design was. Take for example the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. The original hideous design and the more beloved cartoonish design both have the same quality of CGI with the same textures and realism. It's simply the character design and proportions that have changed. But I'm not here to talk about Sonic for two reasons. Number one, original Sonic never actually came to be in the end, and number two, there is a much worse example of terrible character design out there, and even if it wasn't in the title of this video, I'm sure you could still guess what movie I'm talking about. Cats 2019 is quite possibly the ultimate be-all and end-all example of how not to design your characters. And although my How to Write Tropes series is usually just reserved for, well, writing, there's no denying that visuals can be just as important to movies and television as the writing. I mean, as I stated in my original review of this movie, I wholeheartedly believe the visuals are entirely to blame for this film's catastrophic box office failure. But what can I compare it to? Well, as I say, I am a huge fan of good character design and animation, and there are bucket loads of examples of films and TV shows that really excel in that field. But as I really thought about it, I realised, much like my Game of Thrones video, sometimes the best comparisons can be between the different versions of a single product. So, for the first time on this channel, I'm going to take a bit of a dive into theatre, and compare the character designs of the 2019 feature film of Cats to the designs of the 1998 musical stage show of Cats. Now, before we go into the comparison, however, we need to discuss exactly why good character design matters and what makes a character design good. For starters, a good design allows all your different characters to stand out, both from each other and from other media. Second, it can often help provide a bit of personality to the character. Since film, television, video games, and indeed theatre are all largely visual mediums, a character's appearance will play a big role in how we perceive them. And yes, I realise that in the real world, you should never judge a book by its cover, but this isn't the real world we're talking about. This is the medium of art and storytelling. And often a character's appearance can tell a lot to the audience. For example, a character who is very associated with the colour red can better come across as fiery and hot-headed, while a character more associated with the colour blue will better come across as calm or sad. And don't get me wrong, a good character design doesn't necessarily have to be a beautiful character design. Sometimes a character's ugliness can still be well designed and fitting for the character. It only becomes a problem when the design isn't intended to be ugly, or when it's so hideous that it's just downright unpleasant to look at. Which brings me to a very important pitfall in the world of character design. The Uncanny Valley is a term used to describe depictions of humanity, be they animations, animatronics, or just any old art, that are too realistic yet not quite realistic enough at the same time, as though what we're looking at isn't quite a person, or at least a living person, yet still kind of resembles one in a rather unnerving fashion. Basically, because humans are naturally grossed out by dead things, seeing anything that is realistic enough to look human but not realistic enough to be a living, breathing human will naturally make people distressed and uncomfortable. It's our brain's way of saying, that looks like a corpse, I should avoid it. So, back to our two examples. Now, for those unaware, both the movie and the musical follow the same story of a bunch of cats getting together for a ball, singing about their basic character traits, and deciding which singer is going to be granted the prize of a second life. Since the plot is really quite thin, arguably both are relying heavily on the visuals and atmosphere to really gain the audience's affection. Cats 1998, of course, uses people in costumes rather than CGI, but even so, the design is noticeably different. First things first, every one of the cats has a notable mane of fur around their heads, in an attempt to capture the roundness of cat faces, along with makeup that depicts cat noses and mouths. The cast mostly wear leotards coloured like cat fur, with many patches of fur here and there. While the colours are realistic cat fur tones, they are still notably very bright and vibrant, and while most of the supporting cast simply wear leotards and fur, some of the more standout characters will wear various accessories, like fur coats, and in some cases clothing. While it's clear these people aren't cats, the costumes do still look feline. They follow a general convention in terms of hair and outfit and makeup, and they absolutely do stand out and look unique, both as a general design and also for each individual. As a whole, they kind of give off the vibe of an 80s music video thanks to their wild hairdos and spandex, which well and truly adds to the psychedelic atmosphere that the musical is aiming for. Now let's look at Cats 2019. Cats 2019 made the god-awful decision to keep the faces, bodies, and head shapes entirely human while giving them cat ears, tails, and a very thin layer of fur over their skin. This certainly is consistent between the characters, but my god does it look bad. Like I said, the musical has the actors wearing sticky out manes on their heads to imitate the cute roundness of cat faces, along with little cat noses created via makeup. The movie keeps the oblong shape of a human head, but removes all hair and human ears while putting a large, distracting pair of cat ears on top. And then there's the bodies. While Cats 1998 uses patches of fur and coats to prevent the characters from looking completely naked, which again alludes to the fact that cats do have a lot of poofy fur, Cats 2019 just has very thin fur that shows off every inch of their body, bar their non-existent genitals and nipples. It's like watching a bunch of dancing Barbie dolls painted to look furry. However, aside from being nightmarish, these designs don't especially stand out a great deal. The musical's costumes, while being realistically cat-coloured, are bright and vibrant with a lot of detail to them. The movie cats are just the colour of cats. They're just plain and boring. Look at the character of Munkerstrap, for example. In both versions, he acts as somewhat of a narrator figure, but in the musical, he absolutely stands out thanks to his bright silver and black striped coat, and his large ears and very prominent mane, making him very identifiable amongst the crowd. The movie version, on the other hand, barely stands out at all. He's just a man with cat ears and rather dull grey fur. He doesn't stand out from the crowd in the least. As well as not standing out, many of the character designs fail to really tell us anything about the characters, which is an issue given how admittedly underdeveloped they are. Let's take Grizzabella the Glamour Cat as an example. In the musical, a lot about her character can be learned from her basic appearance. Her tattered old coat and scruffy hair and ears suggests she's a poor outcast. There are a lot of wrinkles on her face suggesting she's old and over the hill. She's wearing makeup, but it's notably smudged, suggesting her better, more glamorous days are behind her. And in particular, her mascara and eyeshadow always look like they're running, suggesting she's constantly sad. Movie Grizzabella has a relatively scruffy old coat, but that's the only real indicator of her character. She doesn't look any older than the rest of the cast, her fur doesn't look particularly scruffy, she's not wearing any noticeable makeup, and the biggest visual indicator that she's sad is the fact that her lip is regularly coated with snot from crying, which isn't exactly pleasant to look at. even characters that do put some effort into their appearances in the movie still aren't as effective as those in the musical. Take Buster Jones, for example. They've tried to pull off his posh and pompous look by giving him a top hat and a suit with a little bow tie patch of fur, but that's it. I mean, aside from that, he has a white mustache and eyebrows that don't stand out from his already white fur that just look awkward and pointless. Oh, and he's fat. I really have to emphasize that, because the movie sure does. But by contrast, in the stage show, Buster Jones does wear a suit, but he's also got incredibly neat fur that's clearly been combed, unlike the wild fur of the rest of the cast. Plus a fancy red flower brooch, a neat little black mustache, a monocle, and he carries around a metal spoon that he clearly uses as a mirror to touch up his appearance every now and again. These factors all show he's clearly very high class and haughty compared to the other cats. This, combined with his regal, eloquent voice and mannerisms, properly get across that he is pompous but also highly respected by the community, rather than the movie version that can be best summed up as just James Corden mocking such a character type, plus fat jokes. Ultimately, Cats 2019 fails in more or less every category when it comes to character design. The characters are unintentionally hideous, they're at the very bottom of the Uncanny Valley and thus are thoroughly unpleasant to watch, and even ignoring that, they're also remarkably bland and don't really stand out from one another a great deal. They also trigger the common pitfall of sacrificing good design for realism. Much like how original Sonic tried to abandon Sonic's more cartoony proportions and ended up with this monstrosity, Cats 2019 tried to get rid of the wild manes, bright colours and cat noses, and ended up with this. Cats 1998 might not be the best example of character design, but it is a good example of how to fix the horrors of the 2019 version. Though, if there is one positive I have to say about the movie though, it's that McCavity's clothed design actually kind of works. His hat distracts from his horrible cat-human hybrid head, and coupled with his coat, it kind of makes him look like a gangster. Plus his slit eyes make him more sinister than the rest of the cast. Looking at this version of the character, I can clearly tell he's some kind of criminal gangster, and he's very much the villain. But then he removes his clothes and reveals the horrifying flesh-coloured naked cat monster man that lies underneath. Need I say any more? Thanks for watching the video. This hopefully won't be the last time I talk about character and art design, so keep watching my vids if this is something you're interested in too. But for now, what's your favourite and least favourite character designs? And what are your thoughts on the designs of the Jellicle cats? Whatever your thoughts, let me know down below, like, share and subscribe and all that jazz, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.